When I was 11, my mother pressed a folded $30 bill into my hand, kissed the air near my cheek, and got into a taxi headed for the airport. She was gone for a month. When she finally came home with a suitcase full of duty-free chocolate, she found a county seal nailed to the front door. She screamed on the porch loud enough for the whole block to hear. That scream wasn't the end of the story. It was barely the middle. What happened 4 months later, in a courtroom with a clock that ticked louder than anyone's heartbeat, none of us saw coming, least of all her. Before we start, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if a story like this lands close to home, stick around, because you'll want to see how it ends. Bellwood Hollow, Indiana, 2005. Population just under 4,000. One blinking traffic light, one library with a leaky roof, and a narrow house on Larkspur Street with siding the color of weak tea. That was us. I was 11, and I ran that house the way other kids ran a paper route, with a schedule, a notebook, and zero tolerance for mistakes. I woke myself with a dollar store wind-up alarm clock. I made coffee before my mother's feet ever touched the floor, because mornings went smoother if the kitchen already smelled like something was under control. I knew which bill lived under which magnet, and I knew their due dates better than my multiplication tables. My father, Hank, had died of a heart attack when I was 7. Somewhere between his funeral and 2nd grade, I got promoted to backup adult. Nobody handed me the job. I just noticed nobody else was doing it. My mother, Sandra, was 37, with the kind of face that made cashiers forget to count her change. She had a laugh she spent freely on strangers, and a sentence she saved just for me. She'd watch me fold laundry into perfect squares, or remind her about a bill, and tilt her head like I was money she'd found in an old coat pocket. "You're just so easy," she'd say. I collected that sentence the way other girls collected charm bracelets. By 4th grade, I could forge my mother's signature better than she could write it herself. I never used it, I just practiced it in the margins of my homework, because some part of me understood that in our house, being prepared was the closest thing to being loved. There was one door in my life that stayed shut. Nobody ever talked about my father's side of the family. I didn't know why yet. Gary Doyle had been my stepfather for over a year by then. He sold things, vending routes, discount supplements, one stretch where our garage filled with imported espresso machines that broke twice a week. He called himself an entrepreneur. He wore a watch he checked constantly, like it owed him an apology. My mother loved him the way people love a scratch-off ticket. That spring, he came home waving what he swore was the jackpot, a month in Europe. Business first, he said, then they'd fold in the honeymoon they'd never had. My mother lit up like someone had finally screwed in the right light bulb. For 2 weeks the house filled with tissue paper and the phrase travel capsule wardrobe. She hummed while she packed. She hadn't hummed since before my father died. I sat on the stairs one night and asked the smallest version of the question I could manage. "Can I come?" She didn't look up. "It's grown-up time, honey. Planes cost money." Then she smiled at her suitcase, and the conversation was over. I want to be fair, because fairness matters to me. It didn't feel cruel in the moment. It felt like weather. You don't argue with rain, you find a coat. So I started planning. School schedule. Freezer meals. Which lights to leave off to save on the bill. At dinner that week, Gary leaned back and told my mother not to worry about a thing while they were gone. "I've got the bills handled," he said, his smile sitting a little crooked, like a picture frame someone had bumped on the way past. They left on a Sunday morning at 9:40 sharp. I watched the taxi from the window. My mother walked me through the kitchen one last time, 5 casseroles stacked in the freezer, each labeled week 1, week 2, as if 5 dinners could divide evenly into 31 days. A list taped to the counter: water the ferns, bring in the mail, lock both locks. Then she lifted the rooster magnet and pinned a folded $30 bill underneath, right at my eye level. "For emergencies," she said breezily. "Mrs. Delacroix next door will check on you." Gary honked from the driveway. My mother crouched down, pressed her lips near my cheek without quite landing, and held me at arm's length like she was checking her reflection. "You're just so easy," she said. Then the door, the gravel, the brake lights blinking red at the corner. I counted to 100 at the window, deciding that if she looked back before I finished, it would mean something. She never turned around. The taxi swung onto the highway, and the street went quiet in a way I can still hear. I was 11 years old, alone in a house with 2 locked doors and a rooster magnet guarding $30. The first thing I did, I swear this is true, was wash out her coffee cup. Chore 1. 30 days to go. By Monday night I had a system. I ruled a notebook page into 31 boxes, 1 per dinner. 5 casseroles didn't stretch that far, so the gaps got filled with cereal, toast, peanut butter. Lights out by 9 to keep the power bill reasonable. School breakfast every morning, because 40 cents was the best deal in the county. Homework before dark. Teeth brushed by flashlight, because a flashlight turned alone into camping. Tuesday evening I walked next door, mostly so somebody would officially know I existed. I knocked. Nothing. The porch light wasn't just off, it was off the way a light gets when nobody's needed it in a while. I found out later, from the caseworker's report, that Mrs. Delacroix had left for her son's place in Florida nearly 2 weeks before my mother's taxi ever pulled away. My mother had never actually asked her to check on me. She just liked how the sentence sounded on her way out the door. I walked back, locked both locks, and stood in the hallway listening to the refrigerator hum. It was the only other voice in the house. That was the night I understood the real math of that month. Not one adult on earth knew I was alone. $30 sounds like something when you're 11. It stopped sounding like something at the grocery store on a Wednesday, with a handbasket and a stub of pencil. I did the subtraction in the aisle before I ever reached the register, so there would never be a moment where the cashier had to take something back out of my basket. Pride has a budget too. I called my mother's cell exactly once, the first week. It rang strange, 2 long foreign tones, then a voicemail in a language I didn't recognize. I hung up without leaving a message. She'd warned me calls from Europe cost a fortune, and fortune was a word I took seriously while standing in a kitchen where $30 had already shrunk to 22. Thursday, a postcard arrived. The Eiffel Tower lit gold against a grey sky. On the back, having the time of our lives. Kisses. Then my name, spelled wrong, 2 Rs where there should have been 1. I filed it, pinned beside the rooster magnet and what was left of the cash. Decoration and lifeline, side by side. The ferns got watered. The mail came in. School was the easy part, which tells you plenty about the rest of my life that month. I'd always been a teacher's dream student. That April, I turned invisibility into an art form. Photo day came, and I told my teacher, Mrs. Osei, that my mom forgot to sign the slip, rolled my eyes a little, moms, right? And she laughed and moved down the row. A museum permission slip needed a signature by Friday. I could have forged one. I'd practiced that skill into a fine art. But some line in me refused to cross itself, so I just let the paper sit on the counter, waiting for a mother who wasn't coming. Being flawless, it turns out, is the best hiding place there is. Nobody investigates a straight-A kid with a tidy braid. But twice that week I felt Mrs. Osei's eyes linger half a second too long. Once she asked, "Everything all right at home, hun?" I gave her the smile I'd been rehearsing since I was 7. "Yes, Mom's just busy." She nodded and turned back to the board, and I sat there with my pulse going like a rabbit's. Here's the part that took me nearly 20 years to say out loud. The warning was already in our mailbox by day 6. I just didn't understand it until day 9. A red stripe across the top, final disconnect notice. The electric hadn't been paid since February, 2 months before the taxi ever pulled away. Gary had handled the bills the same way he'd handled the espresso machines. I counted what was left of the $30. $9 against a past due balance of $130. There are problems an 11-year-old can solve with a pencil, and there are problems that simply arrive, whether you're ready or not. On the 9th night, at 6:15, the refrigerator stopped humming midnote. The kitchen light died over my homework. The house went so quiet I could hear my own breathing, because 11-year-old dark inside your own house is a different species of dark. I did not panic. I found the flashlight, put on 2 sweaters, and moved the milk out to the back step where April could keep it cold for free. I had no idea yet what that dead little house was about to cost me. People ask why I didn't just tell someone. Here's the thing about being 11, you don't protect yourself. You protect the family. You keep the secret to keep the peace. If you've ever done that, gone quiet so the walls would stay standing, type it below. And if this is hitting close, subscribe, because what those last $9 had to cover next, you'll want to hear. The casseroles spoiled all at once on a Tuesday. I redrew the boxes in my notebook again. Breakfast became the anchor meal, 40 cents at school bought a tray with milk, and if you offered to wipe down the tables afterward, sometimes a second carton found its way to you without anyone calling it charity. Dinner shrank to peanut butter, counted out in spoonfuls. After school, I stopped going straight home, because home was dark and 50 degrees. I started going to the public library instead, warm and bright and smelling like paper and floor wax, staying until Ms. Trask flicked the lobby lights at 8. She never asked a single question. She just started leaving a granola bar on the returns cart, announcing to the empty room, "Program leftovers, somebody help me clear these before they go stale." I helped her clear them. 2 people can carry a secret together without saying it out loud. That month, Ms. Trask and I carried mine. The cold got into me by the 3rd week. A shower ran on nothing but courage, and April in Indiana does not negotiate. Around day 16, my left ear started hurting, a deep, underwater kind of pain. I found a bottle of children's pain reliever, 2 years expired, and took the dose printed for kids under 12, because the label was the only adult still in the house. School turned into a balancing act. Staying home meant the office calling, and the office calling meant the dead answering machine. So I went. I sat in class with my ear roaring like a seashell and raised my hand at exactly the right speed. At night I slept on the couch under my father's old canvas jacket, laid over the blankets like an extra roof. I'd lie there doing the math. $7 left. 14 days to go. I'd already made it 17, and nobody knew, which in 11-year-old accounting meant I was winning. Day 19 is when the first crack showed, and it didn't come for me directly, it came through the school office, in the shape of a phone call about me. My cafeteria balance had scraped bottom, and the system flagged it. The call rang into the dead answering machine, and nobody ever knew the difference. So they mailed a letter, which I carried in and set beside the untouched field trip slip. 2 pieces of unexploded evidence, sitting side by side on the counter. Monday, Mrs. Osei caught me at the coat hooks. "We've been trying to reach your mom, sweetheart. Is everything all right at home?" I looked her dead in the eye and delivered the finest performance of my young life. "Yes, Mom's just busy." She studied me a beat too long, then nodded, and I walked to my desk on legs made of chalk. That afternoon, the second postcard arrived. The Amalfi Coast, Orange Cliffs in late light. On the back, extending 2 more weeks. Be good. Kisses. I stood at the mailbox and read it twice, because the words wouldn't land the first time. The 31 boxes in my notebook were already a graveyard, and she just added 14 more plots from a cafe table somewhere between the coastline and the kisses. I walked inside, pinned the postcard beside the last one, sat down in my coat, and sharpened my pencil. The math had stopped working days ago. I sharpened it anyway. The coldest night of that month, I moved into the hall closet, the smallest space in the house, which made it the warmest. I dragged in every cushion and blanket we owned, laid my father's jacket on top like a roof, and kept my $7 folded in my mitten, because losing that money had started showing up in my dreams. The fever came on the way dusk arrives, you never quite point to the minute, only notice the light is gone. I woke before my alarm, aching in every joint, ear screaming, and got up anyway. I stood at the bathroom mirror holding a flashlight under my chin and said it out loud to my own grey reflection. Just so easy. It had always been my mother's compliment. That morning it sounded like the fine print at the bottom of a warranty. I made it through homeroom, through second period. Third period was gym, volleyball, of all the ordinary things. I remember the squeak of sneakers, and then the floor doing a slow, polite quarter turn beneath my feet. Somebody's voice stretched long, calling my name. Then the gym floor rose up to meet me, warm as bathwater. What I know about the next hour, I know secondhand. The school nurse read a fever of 103.4. My other ear had begun to weep, which is what an eardrum does when it gives up waiting. She called the number on file and got the dead machine. She called the emergency contact and got a disconnected line. She called the neighbor and let it ring 11 times into an empty Florida kitchen. Then she looked at the principal standing quietly in the doorway, and something passed between them that neither one said out loud. They were mandated reporters. They mandated. The ambulance took me out the side entrance so the other kids wouldn't see. A paramedic tucked a heated blanket around me, and I told him, very seriously, "Don't call my mom, it costs a fortune." He patted my shoulder and told me to let the grown-ups worry about the bill for once. The hospital kept me 2 nights. On the second morning, a woman walked in without a clipboard leading the way, Priya Anand, from Child Protective Services. She pulled a chair close and sat down low, so I was looking down at her instead of up. We talked about the stuffed dog on my blanket for 10 entire minutes. Then, in that same easy voice, "When did your mom leave, sweetheart?" I heard myself say, smooth as a hymn, "She's at the store." Priya didn't blink. She just waited, the way people wait when they already know, and they're giving you the dignity of saying it yourself. "April 6th, I finally said. She left me $30. Priya nodded slowly, like I'd said something entirely reasonable. $30. 23 days. You did everything right. And it was never your job to do it at all. She asked if there was any family, anywhere. I gave her the only name I had. Grandma Opal. My dad's mom. Mom said she moved away. Opal Calloway had not moved away. She was 40 minutes north, on 9 acres with chickens, exactly where she'd always been. Priya found her in an afternoon. 29 days after that taxi pulled away, an airport shuttle stopped in front of the house on Larkspur Street. My mother stepped out, sunburned and glowing, duty-free bags rustling. She reached the porch and stopped cold. A county notice was taped across the door seam, a caseworker's card stapled to the corner. My bedroom curtains hung open on a room she could see straight through, bed stripped, closet emptied. My mother dropped her bags right there on the porch boards and folded in half like someone had let all the air out of her. No, this can't be happening. 29 days. That's how long it took her to notice I was gone. My first night on the farm, Opal made chicken and dumplings from scratch, and the whole house filled with a smell I didn't have a word for yet. She didn't ask a single question with a blade hidden inside it. She just asked if I liked butter on my bread, and showed me to a room at the top of the stairs, model airplanes still turning on fishing line. My father's old room. After supper I did what I was built to do, cleared the table, ran the water. Opal turned off the tap and took the dish towel out of my hands the way you'd take scissors from a sleepwalker. "You can sleep," she said. "I'm not going anywhere." I didn't believe her. I lay awake 2 full hours waiting for the catch. The house just creaked and stayed warm. In the morning there were fresh eggs and a cookie tin on the table, 4 years of birthday cards, rubber banded together, every envelope stamped "Return to sender" in my mother's handwriting. "I never missed one," Opal said. "They just never let me reach you." My mother called 9 days after landing. Her voice came through in its warmest register. "Baby, this has gotten so blown out of proportion. You were fine, weren't you? Tell them you were fine. You're my easy girl. Don't ruin this family." There it was, the job posting for my old position. I told her I had homework and hung up. In town, she worked the audience that mattered. She showed up at Sunday service in a modest grey dress, telling anyone within earshot about the sitter who cancelled, the messages that never reached her. Some people believed her completely. A woman that composed, that well-spoken, surely doesn't abandon a child, she just has terrible luck. That's the arithmetic the whole town already knew how to do. Then the county prosecutor filed a charge for child endangerment, and her lawyer explained the new math. A mother fighting hard for reunification looks better to a sentencing judge than one who shrugs. The dependency case opened that winter. I enrolled at a new school, and a girl named Reese traded me half her sandwich for math help like it was nothing at all. Wednesdays were visitation day. My mother arrived at the first one 15 minutes early, carrying a stuffed bear the size of a toddler. She hugged me long enough for it to land in Priya's notes, called me her whole world twice at a volume calibrated for the observation window. The performance was good. Tears arrived on schedule and departed clean. If I hadn't lived it myself, I might have believed her too. That's the part nobody tells you about charming people. The charm is completely real. It's just never for you. It's for the room. The third visit, she came empty-handed. No bear, no audience voice. She studied her own manicure like it belonged to a stranger, then told me a story I'd never heard in 11 years of being her daughter. Her own mother had died of cancer when Sandra was 12. Her father came home from the funeral, poured a drink, and never quite stood back up. So the 12-year-old ran the house, cooked, cleaned, forged his signature, hid the bottles before school. Nobody helped. They didn't call it neglect back then, she said, looking straight at me for once. They called me capable. I thought I was giving you what it gave me. One unrehearsed tear got loose, and she wiped it away fast, like it had embarrassed her. I almost went around that table. My hand actually moved. I could see her, 12 years old, being called capable by people who should have called for help instead. My mother had been me. Nobody had ever come for her. Then the hour ended, and the shine dropped back over her eyes like a shop shutter closing. So you'll tell the judge this was a misunderstanding. Right, baby. My hand went back to my own side of the table. In January, Opal and I met with Harriet Combs, the Guardian ad litem, a retired teacher who squared her folder against the table edge like she was calling a class to order. The electric company's log, final disconnect notice mailed weeks before the taxi left. The school's log, 6 unanswered calls, 2 letters. Then the page that changed the temperature of the room. The district office had tracked down the hotel in Italy and sent a fax on day 18, unable to reach parent or guardian. Please contact school urgently. Delivery confirmed. Guest notified. Stapled behind it, the airline record. 2 days after that fax, my mother and Gary changed their return tickets. Not toward home. Away from it. Day 18, she knew. Day 20, she chose. The second postcard hadn't been cluelessness in looping handwriting. It had been an answer. Some math you do with a pencil. Some math simply does you. Opal laid one weathered hand flat between my shoulder blades and left it there. No words. Just ballast. While a kind stranger in reading glasses quietly moved my mother from the column marked careless into the column marked chose. That distinction was about to matter more than anything else in the case. Gary solved himself the way men like Gary always do. He loaded his truck and rediscovered an urgent business opportunity 3 states away, leaving my mother the mortgage, the legal bills, and the consequences. The last visit before the hearing, my mother played her final card. Priya stepped out for 90 seconds, and my mother knelt down, eye level with me for the first time I could remember. Listen to me, baby, she said, and her voice was the true one, the rare one. Choose me at the hearing. We'll sell the house. Just you and me. Fresh start. I'll take you to Paris myself, I promise. Her thumb brushed my cheek. You're my girl, Ren. Mine. She'd reached into me and pulled out the exact dream I'd been praying toward for 11 years. And the worst part wasn't that I didn't believe her. The worst part was that some piece of me still wanted to. 4 days before the hearing, Opal took me up to my father's old room and told me one story. My father, at exactly my age, had once snapped the tip off his own father's fishing rod and hid in the chicken coop, too scared to come out. Opal found him by his sneaker toes under the roost door, carried a kitchen chair over, and simply sat down outside it all night. Didn't call anyone in. Didn't threaten. Just sat there so he'd know that whenever he decided to come out, somebody would still be waiting. He came out at dawn. Nobody punished anybody. The rod got fixed with a brass ferrule, and it still hangs in the barn. Whatever you say Thursday, Opal said, this door doesn't close. You come out when you're ready. I'll be sitting right here. In the morning, I asked her for something out loud. Will you sit where I can see you? The juvenile courtroom was smaller than my classroom, dark paneling, a radiator that clanked like someone clearing their throat. Judge Calderone, mid-50s, a face like an auctioneer giving nothing away. My mother's lawyer went first, and he was good, the way expensive things are good. A devoted mother. A perfect storm of miscommunication. A child who thrived independently, a testament to the values instilled in her. My mother held the pose the entire time, a portrait titled Motherhood, Wronged. She'd rehearsed too. It takes one to know one. Judge Calderon let him finish every last coat of paint. Then he took off his glasses and said the sentence I'd been counting toward for 4 months. I'd like to hear from Wren now. Chambers was a plain office with law books and a low round table, and the judge took off his black robe and hung it on a hook before he sat down. Makes me look like a bat, he said. This is just a conversation. He asked about the new school, about Opal's chickens. Then he folded his hands. Is there anything you want me to know? I unbuttoned my chest pocket and set what was inside on the table. $7, folded soft as cloth, and change laid out in a row. My mom left me $30 and 5 casseroles for a month, I said. I made it last 23 days. I did everything right. And I still woke up in an ambulance. I looked at the money, then at the judge. My grandma Opal never gave me anything, except she's there every morning. She sat outside a chicken coop all night once, just so my dad would know somebody was there when he came out. I think that's what I've been trying to say since April. I gave him the only verdict I had. My mom says she loves me, and I believe her. But loving me from Europe isn't the same as a home. I want to live where somebody stays. Nobody handed me that ending. I chose it, and I paid for it, and both of those things belong to me alone. Judge Calderon put his robe back on and made it official. Legal custody granted to the paternal grandmother, Opal Calloway. Visitation for the mother contingent on completing a parenting program. Gavel, like a knuckle against a door. My mother came up out of her chair like the verdict had a temperature. No, this can't be happening. The exact same words as the porch. I realized, in the strange floating calm over that whole afternoon, that I had now heard my mother's honest voice exactly twice, and both times it was grief for something being taken from her, and neither time was it me. In the hallway, her mask half fallen, she tried the last door available to her. After everything I gave you, she said, her voice dropping to the flat, true register, and she handed me the sentence I've carried ever since. You were easier to love from a distance. I did not raise my voice, because somewhere in the last 4 months I had finally stopped auditioning for anyone. I know, Mom, I said. That's why I chose the person who came close. Then I pressed the 7 soft dollars and the change into her palm, folded her fingers over the top the way she used to fold mine over lunch money. I kept your change. Then I walked to Opal. I cried the whole 40 minutes home, not for the mother I was losing, but for the one I'd finally stopped waiting for. The criminal case wrapped up quietly a month later. My mother pleaded to a misdemeanor charge, 2 years probation, parenting classes, community service. No jail. The town split the way towns always do. She finished her probation without a hitch. She was always excellent at completing assignments in front of an audience. Gary never resurfaced, except once as a name on a small claims notice 3 states over. On the farm, spring came. One morning I found the ceramic rooster magnet on Opal's refrigerator, pinned under it the school bus schedule, my stop circled in red pen. So you always know exactly when someone's coming to get you, Opal said, not looking up from her coffee. Same magnet. It used to guard $30. Now it guarded proof that somebody was on their way. The years on that farm weren't a highlight reel. They were just life, which turned out so much better. My mother finished her program and used her visitation 4 times that first year, then twice the next, then Christmas cards that smelled like a department store perfume counter. I always wrote back short and polite. She remarried and moved 3 states away, and the distance she'd always loved me from finally matched her mailing address. I stayed. Graduated with a nursing scholarship. Opal sat in the second row and didn't wave, because waving was showy. She just sat where I could see her, which by then I understood was the entire language between us. She passed away when I was 26, 3 days after teaching me her dumpling recipe like she was completing a handoff. She kept every promise she ever made me. I'm a pediatric ER nurse now, at a county hospital 40 minutes from anywhere, the only distance I've ever fully trusted. Last winter, a girl came in, 10 years old, pneumonia, clothes washed but worn in the wrong order. When the intake nurse asked where her mother was, the girl said, bright as a bell, she works a lot. I'm fine. I know that dialect. I'm fluent. I pulled up the low stool, sat below her eye line, and asked about the beagle sticker on her folder. We talked about dogs for 10 straight minutes. Then I stayed through shift change, through the caseworker's arrival, through the exact moment her chin finally stopped performing. In my wallet, behind a plastic sleeve, there's a $30 bill. Not that 30, that one, I gave back. This is the one Opal handed me my first week on the farm, just in case. The just in case never came, because her kitchen never once closed. I've carried it for more than 20 years and never broken it. And for the record, I'm still easy. Easy to find. There's a difference. If that April taught me anything, it's this: family isn't the people who hand you $30 and a list on their way out the door. It's the ones who stay close enough that you never have to count what's left. That's my story. $30, 23 days, one librarian who noticed, and one grandmother who stayed. If somebody ever made you feel easier to love from a distance, hear me on this: that was never about your worth. Check on the quiet kids in your life. The ones who say they're fine. They're usually the ones carrying the whole house on their backs. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who stays. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.